Welcome to another edition of the Daily Night. I am your host, Brian Smith. In today's edition, we're going to blossom into basketball. Went to the media day yesterday. Going to talk about the men's side right now. Going to talk about women's in the morning. But basketball is here as well. We got football on the weekend, and I'll definitely talk about that. Just put up the game prediction for UCF hosting Tulane a little bit ago. But a little bit of information about the basketball media day and just kind of a general overview from what the players told me, Coach Dawkins talked about, and what I think about the team from an organic perspective. I haven't covered this team before, don't know a lot about them other than just researching stats and some basic things, knowing faces and names. But here are some thoughts about the team looking at this season. Two things stood out to me. Number one was camaraderie. Team's very close. The article that this podcast is put into is just a bunch of outtakes of Coach Dawkins. Guys doing their own mimics, guys doing their own impersonations, and having fun with it. Having grown up in Indiana and been around basketball, I can tell you there are a lot of teams that guys wouldn't do that because they'd be afraid they'd be running because coaches are so dominant. Coach Dawkins obviously is not that way, and that's helped build the chemistry. That being stated, there are also a group of kids that are very long, very athletic, and the length is going to help him. He has more depth. He was joking about it during his press conference, talking about Coach Dawkins, that they were 6 and 7 guys the first year that he was there. And now he's looking, he might play 10 guys this year. I don't know. Just depends on who's hot, but they have a lot of athletes. This is not a typical UCF team. It has built up. Now, can you play a little bit better defense here or shoot a little bit better here against some of the teams they've got coming up? I mean, they got Michigan this year, et cetera. They're not playing teams with low amounts of talent. They're playing high-level basketball teams. So the question becomes, how do you translate that talent from the practice court into the game situations? And Coach Dawkins is obviously tasked with doing that. But before we get in deep into all of that and just discussing basketball at length, I do want to expand upon the one point, the outtakes. That's what this is really about in segment one. And then I'll talk a little bit about basketball itself in segment two. When you see things like this and Bakke, Darius Perry, CJ, different guys doing their own impersonations of him, and actually they were pretty good. Bakke in particular is incredible with his impersonation. Adding the accent was nice too. That also helped. But even a guy like Jamil, who's a pretty basic guy, not trying to do anything, he gave his best effort too. That shows me that this team is confident not only in Coach Dawkins, but themselves. You're not going to talk about stuff like that, do an impersonation of a coach or anyone else for that matter, unless you believe in what you do. Now, these guys are probably going to watch the videos and make fun of each other, retweet them, whatever, and that's fine. But again, from a perspective of winning games, as goofy as it may sound, when you're able to do those types of things, it's going to translate because the team chemistry is there and the belief is there. Basketball is a unique sport because you only got 5 people on the court, and it takes just one guy or one gal to be dominant to win a game. But at the same time, it works in reverse. When people don't believe in what they're doing and or what the team is doing, failure is going to happen more often than not. Again, I grew up in Indiana where basketball is just completely a religion. Seeing the way these guys acted was very eye-opening to me. I was surprised and quite frankly, very happy because teams that are timid, teams that are not as sure about themselves, or they're fake funny, or they're trying to be funny, that doesn't usually end up being very good. Those teams will struggle. Those teams will find ways to lose instead of lose to a team that just beat them. They'll hand it to them. Missing free throws, throwing the ball out of bounds with 2 seconds left, and the guy's wide open in the corner, missed a pass, whatever it may be. Those things translate to execution on the court, which of course changes the scoreboard up above. Basketball is no different than any other sport that way. Must have confidence. For segment two, the thing that's most important to talk about, and I want you to think about this from a question standpoint, how can UCF be just somewhat more productive based on what I was just talking about, or from a player position, or from a standpoint of time management, whatever it is, what's the piece that they need to elevate from a pretty good basketball team to a team that could be in the NCAA tournament? It may not sound like a lot, but to be honest, it really is. Basketball is more complex and some make it to be and vice versa. But one thing, just what is it in your mind could make UCF a team that could make the tournament this year and maybe even win some games? For me, it kind of goes with the earlier segment, and that's team camaraderie and believing, and that's defense. Nobody likes playing defense more than offense unless they just absolutely have a broke jumper and can't shoot in general. Those guys play defense. Be tall, be long, be fast, have at it. But team defense, you need to know where everybody's at. You need to be able to communicate after you get a defensive rebound or you get a live ball turnover, a steal, block shot, deflection, whatever it is. That's how you win in a lot of games. If I think back to Duke, Indiana, Michigan, North Carolina, any of the teams over the last 30 to 40 years that I've watched, Arkansas, 40 Minutes of Hell, what they did with Nolan Richardson in the mid-90s, they annoyed teams collectively. Sometimes they did it with offense because they were shooting well. But like the best teams that Coach K had at Duke that Johnny played with in the mid-'80s and then on down the line with Leitner, etc., teams that North Carolina had put pressure on you with the point guard and they'd have a big guy in the back that could block shots. They did different things, but they played off of each other. Those are the types of teams that this team needs to look at from a historical perspective. And I'm sure Coach Dawkins talks about some of these teams, UNLV, etc. If you're going to do that, you have to play defense first. Defense leads to offense. Offense leads to points. Points lead to victories. It's a transition. Starts with defense. They weren't bad necessarily defensively at times last year. Could they have been better? Absolutely. A little more experience, a little more athleticism, and definitely more depth. There's a chance to see this team make the tournament. Whether or not it's Isaiah making a play, Darius or whatever, it really just starts with being in position. You can listen to me or anybody else, and I'm sure Coach Dawkins has done clinics on this. Defensive position to start a drive in terms of we got to get 5 to 10 points to this drive right here. We're going to drive 4 right here. We're down. We're going to sink our heels in. They're not going to score. We're going to get 3 buckets in a row. That's one thing, but I'm talking about an overall game. We're going to hold them to 60 or less. Setting those kind of goals when you know you can drop 70 to 75 on a team, we're not going to just win. We're going to take over that kind of drive, not just on a couple of possessions of it, like the whole game. That's what this is really about. For them to take the next step, that'll help them get buckets because other teams get demoralized. When you don't score, especially if you're a 15-plus point per game guy, I know this from playing when I was younger, and I wasn't that great, but I could shoot. When I didn't get buckets, I didn't play as well on the other end. That's the nature of most guys. It's the same thing at the college and the NBA level. When LeBron's not playing well, maybe he still plays defense, but that's LeBron. He's an exception. How many guys are really like that at the NBA level? When their jumper is broke that night or they're not shooting that teardrop the way they want, chances are those NBA players, Allen Iverson and everybody else you've seen come along included, defensively they step down. That is going to help you offensively by you playing defense. Plus getting a run out every now and then helps. UCF basketball is probably a player or two away from being a Final Four team, which doesn't sound like much, but so are about 60 other teams. You only need one guy in basketball to be dominant to suddenly go to the Final Four. In football, it's a whole nother animal, and it's why such a small group dominate in football, because you need a ton of guys every year. It's totally different. In basketball, they're close. Will somebody on this roster step up and be that kind of player? I have no idea. Know very little about the team. But I do know they have length, they got camaraderie, and they've got athletes. Watching a little bit of them on film probably isn't going to tell me enough. I need to see them live to really put it into perspective. So I'll wait to do that. But I like this team's length and the way they kind of act together. I'm looking for the defense to take the next step, and hopefully for UCF to be able to not just be good on defense, be at least top 3 in their conference. If you can do that, you could kind of match like what Houston does and some other teams that really get after it. You give yourself a chance to win on any night, even against Michigan or any team like that, an SEC, Big Ten team in the tournament, whatever it may be. It starts with defense. So with that being stated, I'm going to wrap it up. Today's podcast, I just kind of wanted to introduce myself into the UCF basketball world. Kind of did it in a fun way with the article this is going in. But again, it's about having fun, man. Basketball is a tremendous sport. It's something I've enjoyed my entire life, and I look forward to covering the men's and women's teams. Like I said, I'll do something on the women's team on Saturday. But today I wanted to start off with the basketball guys and kind of just how they goofed around with it. A little bit of that tomorrow with the women's team too. But starting off with some of these guys. And again, Bakke, if you have not seen the video I put up on Twitter or what have you, he is hilarious. The guy knows how to impersonate Coach Dawkins, and it is the real deal. Tomorrow, UCF football is going to be hosting Tulane. I just got my prediction up on Inside the Nights. Make sure you check it out. Going to have Game Central on the site on Saturday. It's going to have everything that I've pretty much done this week, organized by category. So everybody have a safe day. Enjoy your Friday. Take care.